meeting, and then when the agenda slide comes up, it'll also indicate that this meeting's being recorded. Of course, some people might miss that point if they come in late or didn't hear me say that now. But I want to echo Rich's comments. We all just look forward to a nice holiday break, and we do wish you and your families the best. We thank you for following us and supporting us, as many of you have over the year. It's been a remarkable year, and we'll be talking about that shortly. I'm pretty excited about the things that have happened this past year and the amount of attention that this topic is getting in the public. So, but again, end of the year, it'll be nice to take a breath, and I hope everybody can enjoy, like Rich said, a little bit of downtime.
Yeah. And to add to that, for those folks joining on the call who aren't as familiar with myself or Jack, Jack Wagner is the president and chairs the board of Michigan Justice Advocacy, and I am the campaign director. So for those folks who don't or have not met us or know who we are in any other capacity, it is a pleasure to have you joining us. For those folks who joined on for the first time, and we're hopeful that you can get some takeaways from this conversation that are beneficial for you.
Thank you, Rich.
Hey, Ryan, how you doing?
Good.
And here in the moment, we will be moving into a section, and I'll start this off as Jack pulls up the slide. But here at Michigan Justice Advocacy, while we are constantly in the foxhole, if you will, fighting for the rights of the folks who the citizens here in Michigan are currently incarcerated, we want to take a moment here to remember the folks, the victims and families of the victims who have suffered losses in the recent Oxford school shootings. So here, as Jack pulls this slide, I will be taking a moment to commend the folks, the bravery of individuals who've been on the front line and trauma-informed work, trying to work through some of the issues that will stem from this horrific incident that we've witnessed happen here recently. So thank you all for your patience with us and your acknowledgement of those folks who have suffered losses in that tragedy. Thank you all for that, and we're hopeful that we can, as great state here in Michigan. We all can work through the tragedies that we face together. And we're hopeful that Michigan Justice Advocacy can be a beacon in some of that work moving forward. So thank you all for your patience. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Mr. Jack Wagner for the rest of our conversation.
Very good. Thank you, Rich. And yeah, we do want to remember that we live in a very complex world. Let's review the agenda real quick. What I'm going to spend a bulk of the time on right now is just talking about where we're at in the whole process of seeing a bill become a law. And here's some of the points we hope to go through. At the end of that time, we'll take a break and do some Q&A. I'm sure there's going to be questions on people's minds. And at that time, I'll figure out how to open up the microphones for everybody. There'll be a few more topics we'd like to touch on before we depart, and then we'll make some closing comments. So yes, with that, let me advance forward to the first, the year in review. So I broke this down into month by month by month, and I'm telling you, every month was full of something. So we started out the year by having our first staffer join the team, our executive director, Mariah LaRowland Wagner. She can't be here today, but she joined us back in January and started our intern program, which has been very successful. We at that time outlined a strategy that we thought we needed to contact every lawmaker, and that is 38 senators and 110 representatives in the Michigan House of Representatives. So that was our tall marching orders at the beginning of the year. There were several meetings besides lawmakers, but I'm just going to highlight one key meeting was with the Prosecuting Association of Michigan Attorneys back in January. We thought we would meet with them and just let them know we were on the scene and what we were about. So one thing we wanted to do was make sure we had tried to have a conversation with everybody we could, all the stakeholders, those that are in favor and those that we might find in opposition. And of all those that I think that might be in opposition, I would probably have to put the Prosecuting Association up at the top of the list. In February, Rich joined us and became our campaign director. It's been a wonderful addition. Rich brings a lot of insight and background and great networks and communications. So with that, we launched into how do we talk to every lawmaker? By March, we had, I'm going to switch over and see if I can do a little laser pointer. By March, we had started to reach out, and sometime during that month, we had met with about a portion of the senators and some other portion of representatives. We started getting on their meeting calendars, and either we met with them or some staffer in their office. We started reaching out to the prosecutors, and we made a gesture and effort to try and reach every county. There's 83 counties in the state of Michigan, and that means every county has its own prosecutor. We did successfully meet with 4 of them way back in March. We've extended that number since then. We also tried to reach out to law enforcement. So we reached out to the sheriff's offices in all of those counties. We met with several sheriffs. The internship program really took off, and you can see that just in the number of applicants that we had back in the beginning of the program. We started out early with just a few email subscribers, 600 or so here. And we also made a point of trying to reach out to the incarcerated citizens themselves, right? So everybody who has a loved one knows the JPay system. We started collecting names, and if somebody wanted to be added to that list, we would try to keep people updated on the inside through the JPay system. Early on, we had about 1,000 followers on social media, but one of the big significant adds to our picture here is we got in touch with some legal advisors, both here in the state of Michigan, Michigan-based Clancy Advisors. They're out of Ann Arbor. And then a global law firm, White & Case. If anybody's in the law business, they probably know this name. And I just have to say in the background, this connection was made through the internship program. One of our interns, turns out, her mom is general counsel for the firm White & Case. So that was a nice connection. March continued on, and we kept meeting with Senator Jeff Irwin. We had targeted Jeff Irwin as our lead sponsor because even back in 2020, he agreed that he would work with us. And at that time, we were just learning the ropes and process. But one of the steps of the process is the senators or any lawmaker usually submit their policy requests or changes or bills through the Legislative Services Bureau. That's a pool of lawyers that work in Lansing to craft language so that it fits the Michigan compiled law codes and the languages legalese. Very hard to read. And nonetheless, they were able to take our good time policy points. And this was the beginning of Senate Bill 649 way back in March. Senator Irwin's office returned that draft to us at the end of March. Then through the months of April and May, we worked with our legal counsel, both, like I said, the state of Michigan lawyer who knows Michigan law, along with some associates and the general counsel from White and Case, helped us to draft our initial proposal. Because when we looked at what came back from Senator Irwin's office and the LSB, we really wanted to make sure the point was made clear. So our lawyers took that draft, rewrote it, and put it in what I would call plain English by writing it in such a way that it flowed logically and that the points were really clear. We gave that language back to Senator Irwin 2 months later, approximately. And so from that point on, he and his office took that under advisement. We continued to meet with lawmakers and stakeholders all behind the scenes here so that they would understand what we were asking for. But until you have a bill in your hands, you could meet with a lawmaker and say, we want you to, sponsor this or back this or be on our team here and work with us. And they're like, fine, that's great. But what exactly am I sponsoring or what am I supporting? So we really needed that bill. Throughout the month of June, July, and August, Senator Irwin's office was working with LSB to get that draft language that we gave him back into LSB, get them to rewrite it. But in the meantime, we thought, well, we're not going to sit around waiting. So we took the draft language that we had initially gave to Senator Irwin's office, and we held a town hall at the end of June. That was on June 26th. Our attorneys were on that call with us. It was a great panel session, and you can see that session here in this link. We'll be making this presentation available as well. So don't worry about writing this stuff down now. If you don't have a paper and pencil, we'll get it to you. But throughout the months of July and August, even though the legislators were on summer break, we continued to push and get out there in the public by saying, let's start a campaign. We decided we would do postcard campaign. Maybe some of you have seen that postcard. I don't have one handy, but we purchased 100,000 postcards and we've given away almost all of them. I think there's maybe a couple of boxes left, but it's the Good Time Makes Good Sense campaign. It's a little like 5x7 card or 6x4. And we use this to go reaching out to the public and educate them on the topic. We were handing them out at farmers markets. We were handing them out at expungements fairs in the summer. Other criminal justice reform organizations, when they had events, we wrote on their coattails. So we thank everyone who might be on this call today who went out there and did the same thing, pounding the pavement and handing out those postcards. It turned out to be a pretty good effort because a lot of folks in Lansing started to talk about it. And by September, also I should note, we launched the email campaign to pressure lawmakers. And that is if you go to our website and you sign up for the petition is just an electronic signature gathering process for our records so we understand how many people in the state of Michigan really support this topic. But it's also to show lawmakers that, hey, there are a lot of folks that care about this. It's not a legally binding petition, but it is a data point, and we can take that to our lawmakers and show them. However, what is even more significant about the email campaign is we gave you the means, that you, the people, of very simply emailing your lawmakers. We created a pro forma, a nice letter that could be easily used as is, or you could copy it and change it around, or you could start from scratch. Well, we gave you the ability to contact your lawmaker and let your lawmakers know that you support the idea of good time. That was the purpose of the entire summer, raising public awareness. By September, Senator Irwin then introduced Senate Bill SB 649 in a package of bills. There were several others in that package. And he did that actually on September 27th, which when I looked back, that was actually the anniversary of our incorporation. So I think that's pretty neat. Not only Senator Irwin, but 9 additional senators signed on as co-sponsors to Senate Bill 649. The whole package of bills went into the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee, and that is where they are at today. So let's look at the next slide. In October, we started to try and create some more public buzz around the fact that we had a bill out there. And with the help of a lot of volunteers, we organized some events, one of which notable event was in Flint, and that was to raise public awareness for good time. We participated in some of the other events. One was on the lawn of the Capitol up in Lansing. The National Lifers Association was promoting their second chance legislation, or the idea of getting a second chance bill out there. We have then since been meeting both in person and Rich, I'm probably sure you've met with more people than I can count, but behind the scenes. But just last month, we all went up as a group and spent some time in Lansing, meeting with our lawmakers in person, seeking support for Senate Bill 649. So then when I stopped and I looked at the year gone by, I realized that our JPay list has grown substantially. We started with a couple hundred or just a handful, really. Our JPay list is now over 550 incarcerated citizens, but specifically asked to be on the JPay list. We get lots of emails, or I should say letters, and correspondence from folks and their loved ones. But when somebody says, hey, can you keep me on your list and keep me informed, they go on the list. Sometimes I get a letter, but it's not necessarily asking to be on the list. So there are probably more people that are aware of our activities than just this 550 inside of the facilities. Outside the walls, we are sending email newsletters out weekly. You may have seen them. And we're approaching about 10,000 subscribers now. So these numbers are starting to get to the point where our lawmakers and the people in Lansing really can't afford to ignore us. And that's significant. What you need is some level of credibility when you go there. And I hate to say it, you need a little bit of a hammer when you go there to say, it's not just me, it's not just the people in this room, but there are several people who care, actually, maybe 10,000. If you look at the number of Facebook and social media followers, we're upwards of 1700s. The internship program continues to amaze me. Over the summer, we had almost, I think, about 100 interns in the program. And each semester, there's at least a couple of dozen interns helping and working on our project. So with that, I'm very thankful. All right, let's look at the 3 bills that are out there, because it's not just our bill. I want to make that point. This year has been phenomenal, and this page kind of tells the story from a legislative point of view. There are 2 bills in the House right now, House Bill 4489 and House Bill 4670. Our bill is over in the Senate. That's why we have this Senate Bill 649. And I've shown when they've been introduced, what committee they're currently in, and kind of what their support level is. If you look at the number of sponsors or co-sponsors, House Bill 4489 has about 28. House Bill 4670 has 5. And I've also noted the party affiliations that are behind these bills. If you look down this column, you'll see House Bill 4670 is being supported by a majority of Republicans, a small handful, but nonetheless Republican-led. Our bill over here on the right is sponsored by 10 folks, all in the Democratic Party, all in the Senate. So we're kind of standalone. We're over in the Senate. The other bills are in the House. But let's compare this to what's been going on in the past. If you look at the previous years and go back in time, back in 2009, a lone representative, George Cushenberry, tried to attack and address this good time problem, because we've been without any good time, any time off for good behavior for over 20 years now. So in 2000, when they initiated it, a few years later, 10 years later almost, George Cushenberry introduced 4498. He was the lone sponsor. It didn't go anywhere. In 2018, David LeGrand and Martin Howerlich introduced House Bill 5666. So 2 sponsors, but again, it just didn't have any visibility, any traction, so it died. In 2020, even Senator Jeff Irwin, at our request, dropped Senate Bill 1242. By the way, when I say dropped, I want to make sure people understand that doesn't mean they let go and didn't do anything with the bill. As a matter of fact, it means quite the opposite. That means they introduced the bill. So if you hear a lawmaker has dropped a bill, that means he's introduced it, and that's significant. Even though Senator Irwin was the only one to introduce a bill last year, look at what has happened. Just take this picture in. This is what has happened since the beginning of 2021. There are 28, 5, 33. I think there's 42 total lawmakers who have put their name on some kind of bill to basically try and address the problem of truth in sentencing and the fact that we are holding people in Michigan prisons for 100% of their minimum sentences. There's no positive incentive in place right now for a person working on trying to be a better person, trying to work on their rehabilitation. There's no upside. And so that has created a problem. And that's why all these people are doing this. They recognize there's a problem and they're trying to address it through our legislation, which I think is fantastic. Let's compare the 3 bills side by side. I've called 4489 the disciplinary credits bill. I've called 4670 the productivity credits bill. And you might hear this also referred to in the media this way. And our bill we call the good time credits bill. Here's a side-by-side comparison about who's eligible. So over here on the left, anybody except those with a life sentence. The 467 bill, 4670 in the middle, is limited. There are certain crime categories which this bill does not apply to. And again, like the bill on the far left, Senate Bill 649, applies to everyone except those with life. The difference as well on retroactivity would be the 2 bills in the House currently are not trying to make their laws retroactive. We are. Simply put, that means we want somebody to go back and have their entire behavior credit or their disciplinary record brought up, reviewed, and if there was no misconducts, we want them to get credit. The credit being 30 days for every 30 days they served without any misconducts, and do that backwards in time. So there might be some people, when you do this calculation, who could end up past their early release date, which is fantastic, which is what we want. We are asking that people get seen by the parole board sooner. That's the whole point. This doesn't do away with the parole board, but this makes it possible for those to get in front of that parole board sooner. If you look at how they calculate credits as well, again, we kept ours, tried to keep it very simple. 30 days credit for 30 days served, a 50% reduction. These are far more complicated, and honestly, we were told early on, keep this thing simple, because when things get complicated, people start to get hesitant and they tend to shy away. So that's the bill comparison. The point of this slide is to say those states in orange currently do not have any kind of positives and incentives in place. No good time, no productivity credits, no earned credits. So they stand out when you look at the rest of the nation as something different. And honestly, amongst even these states, Michigan stands out in that we require 100% minimum time served in a secure facility. So we're different, even amongst those in this group of orange. We are different still in that we are the only state that requires 100% time served, minimum time served. But the real point of this slide is those states shown in blue have both a good time and a earned or productivity credit policy in place. So that means, let me back up a slide. That means if this productivity credits bill were to go forward, House Bill 4670, with its limited application, we would say that Senate Bill 649 serves as a good complement, and other states are doing this. That's the point. Other states have some form of a good time and productivity or earned credits, and those states are shown here in blue. So we're just preparing for the argument that if Senate Bill or House Bill 4670 goes forward and succeeds, we're not done. The job is not finished until we start to really address the problem of mass incarceration. All right. I know this slide has a lot of stuff on it, and I just tried to make it easy by saying, let's just start with the basic process of the legislature. And I underlined the important points. There are two chambers in our Michigan legislature, the Senate and the House. As we said, there are two bills currently circulating in the House, and our bill is over here in the Senate. If you take nothing else from this slide, just understand that there are two bodies or chambers within our legislature. And where are we at in this whole legislative process? Well, we got our bill introduced, and in and of itself, that was an achievement. As I showed you before in history, there have been bills introduced, but they've pretty much died. The process goes like this. The bill gets introduced, and then typically it gets referred to a committee for that committee to deal with it. In that case, the committee that we are in, Senate Bill 649, is in a committee. It's in the Senate Judiciary and Public Safety Committee. I should also tell you that House Bill 4670 has actually made it out of committee, and that is unprecedented. That is unheard of so far. The fact that House Bill 4670 is moving forward is remarkable when we look back at the history. That hasn't been done before. So things are happening in our legislature, and I want to encourage folks that this is a sea change. There's a public tide of change out there, and I think that's part of why you're seeing us be here and the other bill move forward. But it has a long way to go. When you look through what has to happen, it has to go through committee and get out there and be enacted by the legislature. That means after you get out of committee, the whole entire Senate and the whole entire House have to come to an agreement on a bill, the language of it, and it might get modified and adjusted through this process so that both chambers can agree that they will enact it. But once you get through that process, then it goes to the governor. So that's another hurdle, right? The legislature can do their jobs. They can sign off on the bill, and then they move it over to the governor, and the governor could veto. So this is the basics of it. And this is where I think our bill is at. I wanted to make that point. I didn't think this slide was next, but yes, Senate Bill 649 is currently in this committee, and we have been asking you, the public, please email Roger Victory. Please email, write, and call, and text, and everything you can do to get the attention of these people here on the left. Particularly, though, we have some friends already. Not only is Senator Jeff Irwin in this committee, but Senator Stephanie Chang is minority chair in this committee, and she is a co-sponsor on our bill. So already we have two people we know in this committee that would obviously want this to go forward. We need to work on all these other folks, particularly the chairman, because he sets the agenda for the committee. Just want to make sure I'm staying on track here, folks. Bear with me. All right. So we are in committee, but the sad reality is many bills never make it out of committee. There are thousands of bills that are introduced every year. If you think about it, if you had 3,000 plus bills, that's almost 10 bills every day of the year that these lawmakers have to look at. Naturally, they're not all going to make it. And this is a paragraph that tells us a couple years back, somebody did a quick analysis and saw that almost 4,000 bills or more than 4,000 bills were introduced, but only 800 became law. So this is kind of the success rate, if you will, that what happens to these other 3,000 bills or more, some will just die in committee. And that's not what we want to have happen. So what we want you to do, the legislative process is that, look, these folks in Lansing work for us. They are the people we hired and we put into place by virtue of our vote. So we need to let them know what we want. And that's why I'm going to ask everyone to continue to put pressure on our lawmakers to support Senate Bill 649. Ask the chairman in particular, Roger Victory, to give us a hearing. Let that committee actually put it out there for discussion. And if we can get a hearing, we're going to need people to show up and let the lawmakers know this is something we want. They need to hear our voices, preferably if we could be there in person. But if not, when we are fully aware that something's going to happen with our bill, we'll let everybody know. And if you can't be there in person, then write your testimony in support and send it to the committee when this happens. We will let everyone know. The scary part here is they might not let us know that that bill is coming up for a hearing until a day or two in advance, which is not much time to react. But I think in all fairness, if we know it's coming, we will let everybody know, and I will personally take off work and make sure I'm sitting in that Senate hearing, and they're going to hear our voice. So thanks for listening, everybody. At this point, I think I don't have any more slides. Yeah, Rich, did you want to jump back in, or do we want to open
Sure.
things up for people to hear?
Sure. Well, at this moment, what we want to do is open it up for questions and answers. So for the folks who in attendance who haven't dropped a question here or there in the Q&A or the chat, now's the time. We'll spend the next 15 or 20 minutes answering any of those questions if necessary.
See if we can figure out how to. I see somebody's got their hand open.
What we'll do is just raise your hand, and Jack can kind of systematically go through picking those folks as you guys raise your hand.
Helen, I see you had your hand up. Are you muted still?
I feel as though if all of these organizations could unite and just have one bill for all the legislatures to work on, wouldn't that be more successful?
Yeah, it probably would be. And this is Rich answering you, but it's just not, it's often not feasible in this work. And those other two packages of bills, which are both in the House, as Mr. Wagner explained, were introduced by legislators themselves, meaning there is no organization working with either of those groups of folks to introduce those packages. That's a little bit different when a legislator on their own initiative goes out and introduces these things, as opposed to an organization such as MJA encouraging a legislator to get behind an initiative like this. It would be an ideal world if we could get, folks who are advocating for the same issue in the same room for a unified effort for this for this particular cause. But to that point, these two other bills aim at the same issue from a different perspective. So a productivity, package as well as a disciplinary package, if passed, are still both great pieces of legislation for the future. So we're hopeful that we can get all three of them passed. But to your point, yes, that would be ideal. We're not there yet.
If you would let me, I'm going to actually offer a bit of a different perspective. And here's what I'm going to say. I liken this, it's a bad analogy. I liken this to the process of when you buy a lottery ticket, do you buy just one? Well, actually, no, some people actually buy more. And the reason they do that is they're trying to increase their odds. Each one of these bills has like different features to it. For instance, 4670 is pretty what I would call conservative. It doesn't go out there far enough, in my opinion, to really do a good job of trying to address the problem of mass incarceration. It might make a few people feel better. And I think those are the kind of people that might get behind that and actually pass that bill. So the way I'm viewing three bills out there right now is this gives those lawmakers in our legislature options. If they want to try and get something easy passed, easy. None of this is easy. Forgive me. But if they want to try and get something passed, they're going to try and get something with the least amount of resistance, and that would be 4670. When they look at our bill, they probably think, oh my gosh, you're trying to throw the prison doors open and let everybody out. Well, no, not in fact. We're going to let them be seen by the parole board, but make sure you get your facts straight, lawmakers and public. The point is, I want to give those lawmakers an option. And the other strategy behind this is if we see that House Bill 4670 actually goes forward, there's significance in that by itself. That means that they will have effectively undone truth in sentencing for some small portion and population. It's not for everybody, right? They're saying certain crime categories, no, you're not eligible. However, you can now make the argument in another legislative session. Well, you've already undone truth in sentencing for some small group. Why doesn't it apply more widely? So in effect, they're chipping away at the problem. And I'll take a chip over nothing at this point. So that's my opinion of why do we have three bills and is it bad or good?
Thank you.
Who's monitoring?
Do we
I
have
don't see
any other
any more
attendees?
hands raised. Rich, are you able to address any of the
No.
questions in the chat?
Oh, yeah, as questions have popped up, I've tried to be as prompt in answering those as possible. But if we don't have any further questions, we'll take a couple of moments here in a minute to move into what the top of the year looks like for MJA and some of our initiatives moving forward. But I do want to give folks the opportunity to weigh in on the information which has been disseminated thus far. If we don't have any other questions, we can move on. All righty, yeah. If anybody, I noticed someone just mentioned, could we add a couple of folks to our JPay email list? And sure, if you guys have a loved one who's incarcerated that currently is not receiving our newsletter via JPay, I dropped my email address in the chat. You can forward the contact information to me, and I will make sure that it gets to the folks who are in charge of managing that project. Yes, Barbara, no problem. You're very welcome. At what point do we accept the bill is not going to get a hearing, and is there a deadline? Well, let me continue to read that question. Is there a deadline? It's been a few months now with no movement. Well, to that point, or to your question, there's this terminology in legislative process about policy, which is a messaging policy. And we don't necessarily view Senate Bill 649 as messaging policy solely. But we do know that if we don't get it passed here in this lame duck session, then yes, this package of bills will not go anywhere, which is why we're encouraging concerned citizens to contact Senator Roger Victory, who chairs the Senate Judiciary Committee, and to encourage a hearing being held now. We also understand that political climate and relationships that don't allow for the geography to move this piece of policy forward. We're fighting against a lot of history and erroneous rhetoric and data about crime and punishment. So it's going to take some time in softening individuals. And I think one of the points made by Jack earlier when he outlined the comparisons on the three bills, where several years ago, or within the last handfuls of years, we've only had 3 introductions of bills which would have addressed this issue. And those were only supported by 4 folks collectively. We've multiplied that here now, where we have over 40 individuals, 40 legislators stepping forward to say that this is an issue. What that says to me is that the cultural needle, the philosophy behind lawmaking, behind crime and punishment, and our reactions to it is beginning to shift. So even if this piece of policy isn't moved forward this session, we're in a position where we can continue to have this conversation and get it right in another session if that's what's required from us. I hope that answered your question. If not, please feel free to ask, to modify that.
I'll just
If you
add,
wanna
the legislative session runs 2 years at a time. So this legislative session just started in January of 2021. So this bill is technically alive and has a chance up until December of 2022. Does that help? Oh, lots of hands up. Sorry, folks. I'm not doing my job. Forgive me.
Hi, this is Arlie Boyd. I'd first like to say thank you all so much for everything that you've been doing. I really appreciate it. My question is, if all of these bills die, what are the next steps? What are the steps towards getting good time on the ballot before voters?
Hey, Rich,
Yeah.
do you think it's fair to talk about the fact that there's a ballot initiative in motion here too?
Sure. So to your question, Arlie, earlier this year, we were involved in several conversations designed for a coalesced or coalition effort around preparation for a ballot initiative in the event that we weren't successful in getting this passed in this legislative session. So there are several organizations that are currently meeting, bi-weekly, I believe, continuously in efforts to prepare for that. And there's an enormous threshold of signatures that need to be collected, which MJA is very intimately familiar with. Most of the folks who in the most recent ballot initiative to address this issue, many of the folks here, Jack himself was involved as a signature collector and organizer for some of those efforts. So the next step, if this package of bills does not pass out of this session, would be for folks to organize and get behind a ballot initiative, which would be aimed at getting this on the ballot.
As a matter of fact, the
Perfect, thank you.
way I view that ballot initiative is very positive in that it will apply additional pressure to the lawmakers. Because if you collect enough signatures, now they have to do something with that.
Yeah,
There,
and it's kind of, that's how it's set up for us, Arlie, so that as folks apply pressure directly to legislators through legislative meetings, legislative advocacy, which MJA has been at the forefront of. Other folks, when we've been in those conversations with the individuals, the groups and organizations that are working towards that ballot effort. So we're hopeful that we don't have to go that route, but in the event that we do, we'll be looking forward to lend our full support and resources to any initiative to get this issue addressed here with the Michigan Legislature.
Thank you.
so bad with these.
No worries, Jack. It's tech. You'll get to it.
Yeah, look, if anybody can do tech, I should be able to. So I think those that have their hands up, if you've already answered your question, I'm going to lower your hands. If there's more hands that go up, I will, because we need to give people time to really let this sink in.
Sure, and we do. We have a few moments to spare. If folks, you still have questions, please don't hesitate to lean in. We'll spend the next couple of minutes on that, and then we'll go over a couple of top of the year 2022 goals for MJA, and speak to some of the projects that we'll have going on over the next several months.
Do we wait to be called on before we can ask our question?
No,
please,
please jump in. If Jack and I aren't getting to you quick enough, please just hop in.
Yeah, let me do this. If you don't know how to raise your hands in this crazy world, I'm going to just try and open up everyone so that they can talk. I don't see a group mute, group unmute. I'm sure there's one there. But maybe if people are just not finding the button. they can now just unmute your microphone and ask the questions that you have on your mind.
This is Dina Anderson. The question I have about Senate Bill 649 is, does it really, I know truth in sentencing was passed by ballot initiative. And was
yeah,
that right?
we need to address that. That's not true, but go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, good. Okay, well, I understood that any bills to restore good time required either 2/3 or 3/4 a vote by both chambers. Is that not true?
It's very complicated.
Mm,
But let me start by saying that the truth about truth in sentencing is that was done strictly by the legislators, and it was done through a legislative process requiring only a simple majority. So the legislators could undo truth in sentencing with a simple majority. But because I think you're probably thinking of or heard about Proposal B, which occurred back in the late 70s. That was a ballot initiative that took good time away from a certain group of individuals who had committed certain crimes. So there were some 80 crimes that were carved out, and part of Proposal B said, "Hey, if you were found guilty of these crimes, if you were convicted of these crimes, you were not eligible for good time." That's how this whole thing started. Prior to 1978, we had good time or positive incentives for about 100 years. And it wasn't until 1978 that they started to attack this. Slowly but surely, by the time the 90s rolled around, truth in sentencing made it impossible for anyone, to get any kind of time off for good behavior. It's more complicated than that. And if you really are interested, I have a paper. It was written by a researcher over here at the University of Michigan. I know her pretty well. She did a great job chronicling the history of truth in sentencing and how we got here. So it's a good read, but you're going to need a strong cup of coffee and a couple hours.
I would be interested in that.
Who's that speaking again?
That
This
is
is Dina
Dina, if you
Anderson.
could.
I'll email you, Rich.
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, it's a great paper. I think I've not unmuted rather, but I've at least opened up the ability for anybody to ask questions on the phone if they want. But you'll have to unmute your microphones in order to do that, whoever wants to ask a question.
So with that, if we don't have any other questions, we will here quickly move into a couple of other items. And as Jack has covered the last, given us a year in review and all of the, positions and pivoting points for this campaign over the last year. I recall, Jack, when I first came to the team and what, the position that we were in, the status that we were at, and all of the things in between there and now. We've seen quite a bit of activity here over the last year, and I'm looking forward to what the year ahead of us holds. But for those folks here on the call, Jack mentioned, he gave the comparison to both House bills as well as our Senate introduction of 649 and the good time package. One of our primary, our top priority in the first quarter of the year is to have a package of bills introduced on the House side representing the same good time package. So we are currently under discussions with several key House representatives, which we believe that we will have a House introduction of this same bill to run it through that chamber as well in late February or early March. So we'll be looking to do the same. We'll have these same conversations with folks about encouraging and galvanizing concerned citizens to contact their House representatives and speaking about that particular package of bills moving through that chamber as well. And if anyone wants updates on these or wants more information about some of the things mentioned here today in this conversation, please don't hesitate to reach out. I will have Jack drop his direct email in the chat, and you guys already have had mine. And that's kind of the first quarter. Is just our primary focus at that time is to work towards getting a House introduction of this package of bills, and we believe we'll be successful with that and see an introduction somewhere between February and March. In the second quarter, during the spring, we have a couple of large events that will be coming up, which we'll be looking to organize around. So we want to keep folks abreast of that. And we'll start some public promotion of an MJA dinner in the month of April, which is the month of the year dedicated to second chances for individuals who've been incarcerated. So we'll be giving folks more information publicly on that sometime here in the late January. So continue to stay connected with us so that you can be informed on some of that, what's going on there in April. Also, throughout the summer, we'll be having a very robust canvassing program. So we'll be looking forward to reach out to you all as well as other folks who'd be interested in volunteering for MJA this summer. And most of those canvassing efforts will be to prepare for or encourage a committee hearing for both of these in both chambers for this package of bills. So we'll see more of that rev up as the spring concludes. And I mentioned two large events in the spring, one of them being the dinner, but also we'll be looking for a lobbying day sometime in early April as well, kind of in conjunction with that same month's theme and what we have going on. So we'll keep folks updated on that later in the month of January as well. That can kind of conclude our second quarter, and we'll be moving into the summer with that campaign for canvassing and education generally. But we'll make sure to keep folks informed on our website, opportunities to volunteer for canvassing campaigns, as well as other educational events that we'll be having from the spring throughout the summer. Will be posted on our social media as well as our direct website. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have direct contact to us anyway, to get further information or to get involved with that as early as you possibly may want to. At that point, and I will kick it back to Jack, and we will have some parting comments and some follow-up. Jack, if you don't mind, we'll circle back just to see if there's any additional questions so that we can make sure that everybody's voice is heard here today.
Sure. Well, I'm gonna jump to the end and really maybe just thank folks that have been with us the whole time, working hard on our team. And if I didn't give recognition to these folks, I think I would have not done my job. But there's been a lot of folks who have helped us. Mary and Shay are working on the media side, and those are the fine helpers that give us the newsletters that you see coming out every week with their wonderful graphics. I mentioned Rich and Mariah over here as part of our executive staff. We also have some volunteer organizers who've worked, they've been pounding the street for us. Alicia, Julia, Bonnie, and Samira, and Cynthia up in Flint, who helped that Flint rally happen. This is a list of the names of those of us behind the scenes trying to keep things moving, but it's all you folks that are out there that just lift our sails and put wind in our sails that I want to thank. The donors, there's just countless numbers of donors and supporters. And I just want everyone to really remember, this is about those that are oppressed, that are behind bars, and I think not fairly in terms of how much time they spend. It's unconscionable that we lead the rest of the world in the number of incarcerated people here in this country compared to our population. So I want you to know why I'm doing this, and I want to thank you all for being a part of this. I think things take time to grow, and we have seen that growth occur over this year, and I want to see it grow further next year to the point where our legislators finally get the message that they actually do what it is the people of the state of Michigan are asking for, and let it get with the rest of the country. Just thank you so much. That was about it for me, Rich. What else do we have on that agenda? Probably nothing, right?
Well, no, that kind of concludes it. And as I kind of joked at this earlier when Jack and I jumped on for a few moments before you folks clicked in, but I mentioned that we carved out the time so that, you know, in the event that we had a multitude of questions, because, you know, on a day-to-day basis, we get calls and emails with questions about the status of this bill. So we just wanted to make sure that we carved out enough time for that. But I was certain that we'd finish this agenda pretty quick. So thank you all for joining us this afternoon. If you have any additional questions at this time, please don't hesitate. But if not, we will conclude today's town hall conversation. And we'll be looking forward to hearing from you all in some of the events and initiatives that we have going on in the top of the year. To you all, please have a wonderful, joyous holiday break. Continue to observe safety measures as you're out and about this season, but be safe in your travels and enjoy the time with your families and loved ones. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon, and we look forward to working with you and keeping you informed here as we turn 2022 over in a few minutes. And that's it for me, Jack.
Amen.
We'll close it out.
That's
We'll
great, folks.
give folks the rest of their afternoon back.
That's great. Thanks all. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.